Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for being here as always. And today I'm joined by a very wonderfully special guest in Glenn of the Star Wars Reading Club YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being here, buddy.
Yeah, not a problem, Andrew. Thanks for inviting me on to talk Rebels. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh man, that season finale though. It's so good. It's so
Oh,
good. Just Dave, like I felt like I should be mad because there's lots of unanswered questions. But I'm not. It was so Star Wars and so perfect that yeah, like I can't be upset about the fact that about missing questions like where's Ahsoka or where is Ezra and Thrawn or
just those little details here and
yeah,
there.
yeah, just
Well,
those
I,
little details.
I know what you mean. I saw your review, and in specifically to the questions about the remaining gaps that need to be filled in. At the end of it, I'm okay with it. I've seen people talking about it, and Filoni's done a bunch of interviews at this point, but he likes the model of storytelling where you end one story and it opens up the door to a whole bunch of other stories, like just around the corner. So I can't be mad. I think here's the thing in just breaking it down in that regard. Did it conclude the series for you? Because I think that there's a differentiation between, yeah, we still have whatever Ahsoka's been doing up until this point. But for me, I think like even if you take Ahsoka and Thrawn and Ezra, yes, they'll have stories to come. But I think the finale did a fabulous job of closing the door on their Rebels story. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Yeah, I mean that's a very good and important distinction to make is the difference in between, yes, those character stories are going to continue on, but the main story of the liberation of Lothal, I think I mentioned it in at least my review, that it does feel like because the core story of Rebels was the Empire comes to Lothal
right.
and the end of the story is the Empire leaves Lothal.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole story is wrapped up very, very nicely. I love it so much. It's so good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just because I've gone back and forth. Like it is definitely Ezra's story. I always thought that it was also too the story of Kanan and Hera. But I think too, and tell me if I'm wrong, because in focusing on the main story as the liberation of Lothal, I think at the end of the day, like this was Ezra's story, and not just him saving Lothal, but basically transforming himself into a Jedi. I don't know if you agree with that because I've
Yeah.
gone the whole time, Kanan and Ezra, they aren't Jedi. So, let's say there is maybe a contradiction with other Jedi being around. I never looked at them as Jedi, but I think by the end of the finale, I look at them both as Jedi. They both made that kind of the self-sacrifice that
Yeah.
really put them into the like category as Jedi. So that's just to say, like, yes, the story of Lothal, but man, that Ezra story came full circle. I've always been a bit more of a fan of Ezra than I think people in general, but I think really Ezra came into his own by the end of it.
Yeah. Season 4 Ezra really won me over. Season 3 Ezra was a little bit because it felt like he learned the lesson of, no, this is my true place with my family, like 3 times
Right.
in season 3. And even a little bit in season 4, but like second half season 4 Ezra is an incredible character.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the beautiful thing about Ezra too, it wasn't just like, yes, it was him saving Lothal, but it was also making and this is why I bring up the Jedi thing. It was making the differentiation between like really what Ezra ended up doing and what Anakin couldn't do. Like his
Hmm.
whole thing was, even from the very beginning, was longing to be back with his parents, which was the whole attachment issue. And really through all 4 seasons, it built and built and built, yes, to the liberation of Lothal, but really, like the Ezra character for me really, hit the spotlight point. I think that the way that Ezra ended up and just what he became was perfect by the end of it. How do you feel? I think I can say pretty strongly at this point that season 4 is probably my favorite of the 4 seasons.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the Bendu though. The
The
I love
Bendu
the Bendu so much,
and
but
then
no.
Vader, Ahsoka, and two, I
Yeah.
think. But
Yeah, Vader Ahsoka, like I love the character of Ahsoka. But Vader, I don't know. I've never been, even as a kid, I was never like a mega fanboy of Vader. Like I didn't dislike him. He was just like, yeah, he's the bad guy. Okay. And I mean, honestly, my closest, like, the one part of Vader that I love is primarily the Revenge of the Sith, and even like the recent Vader comic, the second run of Vader comics that we're getting now. Those versions of Vader I love, because that's Vader in the most amount of turmoil.
Right.
And Return of the Jedi Vader I really enjoy. So just like everything like post Wards of the Sith and like pre Empire Strikes Back Vader, for me at least, just feels like I'm the evil bad guy. You know, like he did, right. He's completely connected to it. So it's kind of just what I deem as label as Sith porn. Where it's just like
Jedi killer, like.
Yeah, I'm the Jedi killer, like the Rogue One scene. It looks really cool, but it's not it's kind of a character moment for the the rebellion soldiers and stuff in that hallway, but it's primarily there to make fanboys go, yeah, Vader's such a badass. At least, just for me. So Vader in Rebels wasn't ever really too big of a thing. But anyways, back to your primary, bounce back question. I think that season 4 of Rebels, in particular the second half of season 4, was some of the best Star Wars, period. Not just the best of Rebels, but some of the best Star Wars, period. I mean, even like in Jedi Knight, when they were taking off on their gliders and stuff, it just felt so... I like it when Star Wars goes into that fairy tale tone a little bit, where it does have that kind of tone of like Labyrinth or The Neverending Story, or even like a lot of the Miyazaki, I think that's the guy's name, the Miyazaki anime movies like Spirited Away or Nausicaa, and From the Valley of the Winds and stuff, or Howl's Moving Castle, and that shot and that sequence of them taking off on the gliders just felt so Miyazaki to me. It was just, it was so good.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know what you mean from the tonal aspect. I don't know if you saw it, but after the finale aired, Filoni and then also the voice actor of I think it was Hera, Sabine, Zeb, and Ezra, they did about a 1-hour Q&A, and I don't know if you saw it, but it's so...
I haven't seen that. I need to see that, and I also need to see the Daisy Ridley interview that was on Facebook.
Oh, see, I didn't see the Daisy Ridley one.
Yeah, there's like a Daisy Ridley Q&A or whatever that they did, I think, last weekend or like a few days ago or something like that I need to go and watch.
In connection to Rebels, or just
no, not connection to Rebels at all, but just like also I'm a Mega Ray fanboy. Right. So
well, I might be a fanboy of Filoni at this point. So and then if you want a 1-hour primer on behind or inside the mind of somebody who's creating Star Wars, and in my opinion, creating it, I don't want to say the right way, but in a way that I think ends up in something as good as the finale. Watch that 1-hour Q&A, because he touches on everything from the tone of Star Wars, the feel of it, what the dark side and light side represent. We just talked about Vader. What you just said about Vader being this badass who's really cool. How, I look at Vader like that from time to time myself. That's why I love these Vader comics. But he breaks down just the tragedy of Vader. It's like Vader, yes, he's a badass and a cool, evil character within the franchise, but Filoni just says it perfectly when he says, like, he's miserable. He's somebody who people should try not to emulate, which I don't know if people are. But regardless, that Q&A was just great, because I think what he says in that directly leads into why the finale, and really the Clone Wars series in general too. I think Filoni, in my opinion, more than anyone right now, is really just hitting the beats of Star Wars. And yes, telling new and original stories, but really sticking to... model might not be the best word, but sticking to the tone and the feeling of it, because I got the feeling, I got the Star Wars feeling, I'll just say, at the end of this also.
Like, I see where you're coming from there. Yeah, I would definitely agree that Dave Filoni is uh, he is the Eli Vanto to George Lucas's Thrawn.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He is an apprentice that learned at the feet of the master. And
And
I mean, with that being said, yeah, George Lucas isn't a perfect storyteller. He's not that good of a writer, and he's not a good character director, but he's one of the most talented storytellers of our time.
yeah,
And Dave Filoni soaked up all of that and inserted some of himself into that, and is now giving us incredible things like the end of Rebels.
exactly. And he defends Lucas a lot. Like he says, even in that 1 hour interview, he said, like, I learned at the feet of the master. He learned, and this is why I think in a lot of ways it's that feel. And of course Lucas had it, but I think Filoni's really adopted it too. And it's hard to pinpoint tone and atmosphere. Like I couldn't really tell you why the Ezra and Thrawn moment in the finale was Star Wars, even though like Thrawn was being surrounded by tentacles. Like it could have been anything at that point, but for what it was, it was like a perfect atmosphere and ending to that story.
Yeah, it was. With that being said, though, I'm getting a little annoyed with the new canon and then its obsession with tentacle monsters. Just saying, we got.
What's the other one? Where throw the the Force Awakens.
Yeah, Borgullet, Wrath Tars. Now the Solo movie. There wasn't any tentacle monsters in The Last Jedi. Thank you. But yeah, like out of the series finale of Rebels, Ep 7, Rogue One, and Solo are all going to have tentacle monsters, and it's like, different character ideas.
Now that you're pointing it out, it does seem they may be hitting their limit on the tentacle monster. At least the Purgles, it was it wasn't as Borgullet like.
Yeah, it wasn't just like, what in the hell is this land squid mind reading force sense? What in the hell? Yeah, that was interesting. But anyways, we should start getting into the comments. We've been talking now for like 15 minutes, and we should probably hop into the comments and stuff. So, comment number 1, if I can get it to show up, is from the Fat Batman. The only thing I want explained is what Ahsoka was doing and why she didn't help Luke train. And even that I can look past. But if something had to be explained, that's what I'd choose. Yes, definitely, Batman. For me, that is kind of the big question. With, I don't know, I would say that it's almost tied with the Thrawn Ezra question too, and even maybe the Jason Sandula question too. Those are the 3 big but what about questions that I've got going on with this? And I wanted to feature your comment, the Fat Batman, to bring up what is our ideas for what Ahsoka was doing. Have you put any thought to that, Glenn? Like, have you tried to headcanon in, like, well, maybe Ahsoka was doing this during the original trilogy and then she managed to show up later?
Well, let me just tell you this, Andrew. I've spent probably the last 3 days thinking about this question. So, yeah, it's probably a safe bet to say yes, I have thought about this. I've just poured through interviews with Filoni and some others and kind of tried to make it all work, but there's a couple of things too. I would say Ahsoka's probably up there for me. I mean, just being such a fan of Thrawn and Ezra is probably the thing I would want to explain the most. But Ahsoka definitely needs an explanation. There's a couple things to point out, though, that I didn't quite know is when Ahsoka leaves the world between worlds, she doesn't go back to. Not only she doesn't go back with Ezra to Lothal, but she also goes back into her timeline that Ezra pulled her out of.
Yeah, because we saw at the end of that season 2, we saw that silhouette of Ahsoka walking into the doors as it panned up to Vader as he was crawling out of the rubble.
Exactly. So that wasn't like an in the future image of Ahsoka. That was pretty much in that timeline of events that were happening at the end of season 2. But I think with me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but have you seen those Filoni cards that he created after the season 2 finale?
Oh. Yeah, I need to get every single one of those as a poster, and then just
they're cool.
To hell with sound treating my office. I just want all of those everywhere.
Well, I think that's because even at this point, I believe Filoni, he might have a few ideas of what happened to Ahsoka, but I don't think even he really knows at this point. But I think just in looking at those cards, they do tell the story, and some of it was, you know, unfolded within this final season of Rebels too. But the way that, you know how she goes down into the temple, we can only assume, and she kind of walks through the water there.
Mm-hmm.
Filoni did an interview recently where he said that what that symbolized, maybe not necessarily she literally goes through water, but it symbolized a transition where she transcends from the world of the world of death to the world of the living. So whatever happens to her, and I think basically at this point we can really only point to so much, but I think that that journey, whatever she begins on Malachor, is going to be the key to Ahsoka's ultimate appearance by the time of, post Battle of Jakku on Lothal there.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get that story, but I think it's all going to hinge on the journey that she takes on Malachor. There's going to be some sort of, in my mind, some sort of like transcendence of Ahsoka, which is going to be explained. Because don't forget too, the Batman brings up Luke, but this is why it was important for me to figure out that she went back to the Malachor timeline. She never gets back up with Ezra and Kanan. Like, she didn't participate in the liberation.
She didn't go to them. Like, she doesn't know about their interactions with the Bendu. She never, she never saw any of the interactions with Saw or anything like that.
Right. So, I mean, Ahsoka's probably just off doing her own thing at this point. And I mean, it might supersede what Kanan and Ezra are doing, and it probably does. And it probably supersedes in a way maybe what Luke is doing. But the thing is, too, is her look. Filoni did that all on purpose. Like, there was an interview where, like, she's obviously a different character, I would say. Like, it might be in the question of why she doesn't train Luke. Like, we might need to start thinking of Ahsoka as a different character altogether. Like, she might have her own conceptions of the Force and what should be done. For the same reason, well, why doesn't the Bendu train Luke?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I actually never thought about that. About like, well, why doesn't? Yeah, she might have just transcended into a different realm in which she doesn't deal with the mortal concerns of the galaxy. She is busy with other things, whatever that other thing is. And I kind of like the idea of that other thing never really being, quote, explained.
Right.
Because, like, especially these last few episodes in between the world between worlds, and then you got, Luke's force projection. The Force is becoming mysterious again. It's just, It is. And that's what matters.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, I think that that explanation does need to be given, but I don't want it to be explained to the point of, well, you see, there's the cosmic force and then there's the living force. And most Jedi and the living world operates off of the living force. But then if you transcend into the cosmic force, then there's actually two subsets of the cosmic force. There's the ascended people that ascended from the living force into the cosmic force, and then there's people like the Bendu have been, included into the cosmic force. I don't necessarily want that kind of exposition.
Yes, I agree.
But I would like to see kind of a conceptualization of your idea, if that's the way that they decide to go with it. For me, honestly, my answers to Batman's question here is a little bit more boring. Number one is I think that she might have been busy. She had her own thing going on. Now, my two ideas are that either it took her 4 or 5 years, or rather 5 or 6 years, to either build herself a ship out of the remnants and wreckage of what was left of the battle at Malachor in order to escape Malachor, or something that I really like and that I'm hoping kind of goes that way is during Luke's quest to figure out more about the Force, he goes to Malachor after Return of the Jedi and finds Ahsoka there. And she doesn't identify as a Jedi anymore, and she teaches him some things, and maybe they have a good heart-to-heart and a wonderful conversation about Anakin and Vader. but I would love to see that story unfold. But I would really. I want Ahsoka and Luke to meet post Return of the Jedi,
Yes.
and I think him finding her marooned on Malachor 5 would give us that.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I think if they are going to meet, it would happen post Return of the Jedi for sure. Do you have any like thought or? I mean, I guess we've touched on it. Her being, just a bit busy, I guess, during the time of her not training Luke. But just a thought on that as well is I like to think that it's not really a race for Luke, for everybody to try to train him in between that episode 4 and episode 6.
Yeah, it's the remnants of the Jedi that are interested in Luke's training.
Yes, you're exactly right. And that's exactly where I was going. Have you seen the Ashes of Jeddah arc for the new Star Wars comic?
No, I haven't. I'm going to be ordering a actual like Kindle Fire tablet and getting Marvel Unlimited, so I actually start getting caught up on the comics.
Yeah, well, overall, I was a little bit disappointed with that arc, but there is a really good scene. I hope it's okay if I talk about it
Oh
a bit
yeah,
here.
no, that's fine.
Basically, I was really hoping that Luke would kind of search out some of those ancient Force-worshipping religious orders, which he does do. He gets into contact with an aspiring disciple of the Wills and also the cult of I think it's the Central Isopter. But he ends up going to gaze into an abyss, which used to be the old location of a great temple, it's called. And he looks into the abyss with an aspiring member of the Disciples of the Wills, and he kind of comes out of it with really no answers, but his friend actually falls to the dark side and kind of turns on Luke. And the lesson out of that was Luke coming out of it and thinking, like, I'm trying too much to become a Jedi here. I'm not focusing on the rebellion and my friends. I might have to be okay with the fact that I'll never learn the ways of the Force and I'll never become a Jedi. And I think that is a beautiful connection with Obi-Wan waiting 3 years to basically send him to Yoda in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And his whole thing, too, after that was the cult of the Central Isopter tell Luke, like, you're going to need a guide. Like, you're out here on the moon of Jeddah searching for answers, but this is a perilous time. The dark side, like your friend, he just fell to the dark side. You could easily be succumb to the dark side at this point.
Yeah, he's not ready for ready for his confrontation with Vader in episode 5.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even when he's leaving, Obi-Wan and Yoda are telling him, like, this is a dangerous time for you. You can't just run off and go confront Vader. And of course, Luke wants to save his friends. But it's, for me, almost in a way, Ahsoka would be almost the worst person to go just run up to Luke. Maybe not the worst, but I mean, she's not a Jedi, right? And his path is to become a Jedi, and that's where Obi-Wan and Yoda are taking him. So, yes, Ahsoka might be doing other things, but I do also think it works if they just make Ahsoka wise enough to not necessarily have to go seek out Luke and interfere in all that story.
Yeah, definitely.
It might be bad for Luke if Ahsoka shows up and is like, yeah, I used to be the Padawan of your father, but then I left, and he kind of.
And now I'm kind of using both sides. I'm kind of using both sides. I'm actually attached to this kid named Ezra. He's a very good friend of mine, and along with his friends. And
you were born on the same day, and
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It'd be reinforcing those attachments and stuff that Luke isn't supposed to be forming until episode 6,
right?
When he's ready to be able to stay on the light side while having those attachments.
Exactly, I agree. I do think that they're two such prominent characters that it's hard to imagine, like, post original trilogy, that they don't run into each other at some point. But at least after the Battle of Jakku, they have two very different missions. I mean, I like that Ahsoka is keeping her promise and searching the galaxy for Ezra, and Luke is off searching the galaxy for Jedi lore, so they could cross paths, but I think they're too prominent to not get that awesome scene where
Yeah.
they have discussion. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it would be just a cool thing to have when you have two great characters like that.
Yeah. My other hope now, knowing that Ahsoka's around, is my big hope for episode 9. This is me now jumping into crazy, wild fan speculation territory, but my big hope for episode 9 is I want a. Did you ever play Mass Effect 3?
I didn't know.
Okay, well, at the end of that, basically the entire game is you going around rounding up, the Geth and the Turians and the Asari and et cetera, gathering all these factions together to make a final assault on Earth, where the Reapers have kind of concentrated all of their efforts, and there's this massive, grand, huge space battle, and there's this beautiful scene of especially when you do it perfectly and you get every faction on your side for that end confrontation with the Reapers. There's, this wonderful montage-y thing where it's, your main hero ship with, Shepard, your character, and your small team and everything on their ship. And then there's just thousands of, ragtag ships from, the Asari Collective and the Turians, and they're all checking in. And, it's like, is everybody ready? And then, he goes to, this is the Asari Collective. This is Admiral whatever from the Earth Alliance. This is da-da-da. This is da-da-da. This is da-da-da. And I want that so bad in episode 9. I want to see, Sabine at the head of a Mandalorian fleet to take on the First Order. I want to see Ahsoka. I want to see, an elder Hera Syndulla still flying the Ghost. I want to see
Ezra and Thrawn. Come on, we need Ezra.
Yeah, exactly. I want to see. I want to see the remnants of the Chiss ascendancy. I want to see. I want to see that kind of moment of the entire, like, all the free peoples of the galaxy coming together to take on this darkness of the First Order, take on the darkness of Kylo, and I'm really hoping for that. That's my one thing that I'm allowing myself to be like, I want this so bad. And bringing it back to Ahsoka and Rebels, I want to see Ahsoka in a shot during episode 9, in that kind of sequence. I would love to see Ahsoka at the controls of her ship that we saw at the end of Rebels.
Yeah, isn't it just crazy the amount of possibilities now that have opened up because of this finale?
Mm-hmm.
Going into this season, man, I just was not sure about Ahsoka. In season 2, I was just like, okay, this is probably the end of Ahsoka. And then a couple episodes, it's like, okay, she's still around. Yes, Ahsoka lives. And now it's like, Ahsoka lives, and we're post Battle of Jakku now at this point. So, I mean, the doors are wide open. It's interesting because I'm not sure exactly what direction they'll go in the next animated series. It seems like Filoni doesn't want to just continue with Rebels 2.0 and thus make it the story of Sabine and Ezra, Sabine and Ahsoka, and then Ezra and Thrawn. But I don't know, the Ahsoka possibilities. I don't know how you feel, just because everyone does want it explained some way, whether it's in a movie or in a live action TV series or books. I lean almost towards the books, but it might be too big of a story to be left to books. So,
well, here's the thing about I mean, with books in general, I feel, especially with I know you haven't gotten into it, so no spoilers about the Last Jedi novelization. I know you just got caught into it. But the Last Jedi novelization, I feel like the one criticism that I do wholeheartedly agree with for The Last Jedi as a film is that the story is a bit too big for one film. There's too many character lines, too many plot lines, too many this, too many that. And at least in my opinion, I think that if you want to tell a big story, print form, book form, novel form is the best way to tell that big, massive, overarching story.
I agree.
You can fit a really big story into 300 and something pages of a novel. And so I would say either as a novel or as a comic series. Like, give me like a 25 issue comic run of Ahsoka and Sabine's run to find, or their mission to go and find Ezra and Thrawn and what they're up to.
Yeah, see, that's a great point too. If they did do it in that medium as well, see, for me, the interesting aspect is, as much as it would be awesome to see the search for Ezra and hopefully Thrawn by that point too, but regardless, because I'm such a big fan of everything that's like, because the Force is mysterious in a lot of ways now too, I'm almost just as, or maybe even a little bit more curious to the story of her on Malachor and the story in between what happens, between, I guess, the season 2 finale and when she shows up with Sabine there. Because that transformation, it seems like, again, this would be the third version of Ahsoka at this point.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that we don't know when that end scene happens at the end of Rebels, that epilogue scene. I mean, Jason Sandula looks like he could be anything from 5 to 12. You know what I mean? Like he could be so we're talking like we could be talking literally within months after the Battle of Jakku. Or we could be talking 5 years after the Battle of Jakku.
Right.
Is when that scene of Ahsoka and Sabine going off. So
yeah. The thing that I like about it too is she's keeping her promise. So you could create a huge story for the reason for why she doesn't intervene with Luke, but then because if you're going to say, well, why would she come back to search for Ezra if she's off doing this other thing? If she is taking on more of like a Bendu type of a role. But
for me, I mean, if they do go the route of that you proposed of them of her just transcending into a Bendu sort of status, existing more in the cosmic force than the living force.
Sorry, I should say maybe not transcendent into like more of an ethereal type character. I like same plane of existence, but more like a bigger understanding of the Force itself.
Yeah.
So kind of more distant from people in that sense. She's more like independent. So but still within the same existence. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're perfectly fine. I cut you off about 2 minutes ago. I'm thinking of it inside of that same framework too. I think you just worded it much more properly than I just did. Where she has ascended into a higher understanding.
Yes.
And I mean, if they do go that route, the Force told her that it's time to go look for Ezra.
Mm-hmm.
She received a vision of her and Sabine looking for Ezra. So she goes, okay, I guess the Force has deemed that it is time. And so she rejoins the galactic stage to go and find Ezra.
Yeah, it's all just so good, huh?
Yeah, it's so good.
I have to admit this. Right when they first announced in the Clone Wars TV series that Anakin was going to have a Padawan, I was a skeptic almost of like, oh, how's this going to work? I didn't necessarily mind the character once the show began, but to go from that point to now Ahsoka legitimately being one of my favorite characters in Star Wars and perhaps one of like the biggest points of speculation at this point is pretty amazing. And again, too, I kind of have to give it up to Filoni. I mean, it is his character, and they've done an excellent job, in my opinion, there.
Yep. George Lucas came up with the idea, and Dave Filoni, filled it out for the character of Ahsoka. Right. And gave her life, along with Ashley Eckstein, too. And it's incredibly good. But anyways, thank you so much for your comment, The Fat Batman. I truly, truly appreciate it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We've got one from Spartan EZ, wonderful Twitch streamer, by the way. Plays lots of Galaxy Heroes. Go ahead and check him out on Twitch and stuff like that. Has tons of fun conversation there. But anyways, we're at, I was really hoping the series ended at the Battle of Scarif. Since we know Chopper and Hera made it at least that far, they really only had two choices: kill them all since they weren't in episodes 4 through 8, or make their fates unknown. I'm just glad Ahsoka is alive and well as she's such an awesome character. Here's to Ahsoka series. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to see an Ahsoka series. Yeah, I know it's fan servicey. I don't care. I say it all the time. I am a fan. I enjoy being serviced. Thank you. As long as it doesn't distract from the story that's being told, fan service away, please. But yeah, I wanted to touch on this comment entirely because of where they decided to end it,
Right.
and what they decided to do with the end of the characters. You know, what they did with the fates of Callus and Zeb and
Rex
and Rex and all of them. What did they do? And yeah, I mean, it comes down to the fact that it's a kids show on Disney XD. They can't Rogue One it. They can't do that. Also, Rogue One already did it. You know.
Well, you know what's interesting though too. Sorry, just as a bit of a side, and I hate to keep going back to this 1 hour Filoni, because he did touch on this on the why he was a bit shocked that everyone wanted basically a bloodbath at the end of the series. But
I know, right? Like,
he pointed to episode 6. He's like, I don't remember everyone dying at the end of episode 6.
Yeah, I at least in my opinion, I call it the Game of Thrones effect or the Breaking Bad effect, where it needs to be dark to be a good story.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
I do get the idea that, you know, you need to make sure that sacrifices mean something.
Right.
You can't just have them just respawn. You can't just have them like it wouldn't mean much to have a sorry, I'm just checking something real quick. Anyways, I was looking for that Q&A. I'm going to put that in the description down below.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Looks like the most, quote, reputable one is from Sky...
Yes, that's the one.
Skywalking Through Neverland. Yeah, wonderful podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
Why am I not subscribed to them? There we go. Yeah, I'll put a link to Skywalking Through Neverland's video down in the description for you guys to check out this Q&A.
It was good too. It was really emotional. It was right after the finale aired, so it was just like a nice little send off. I watched, I think, Monday night. So regardless, everyone would probably enjoy that if they checked it out.
Yeah, but anyways, I call it the Game of Thrones Breaking Bad effect, where yes, you do need to make sure the character sacrifices mean something, but character sacrifices don't always need to be necessary for a good story. At least not in my opinion. Like, yes, you want it to be like. At least, especially in Star Wars, in Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or those, you know, dark, dirty, dingy, realistic stuff, you know, whatever. It always comes back to I don't know if you've ever watched the epic rap battles of history. Here on YouTube.
Yes, I've seen them.
Yeah, there's one. There's the one in between Tolkien and George R. R. Martin, and there's this line that Tolkien has, that they gave Tolkien in the rap battle, and it's what was it exactly? It's yes, it is more realistic for characters to die randomly, but the genre is called fantasy. It's meant to be unrealistic. And that's just it, especially with Star Wars, is that yes, character sacrifices should be used as a character device, as a plot device, as a story device, but they don't need to happen in every single story, and especially in Star Wars. It's frickin' Star Wars, where the good guys always win. You know, even if they win super bruised and battered, like at the end of Rogue One, you still end Rogue One on, you know, Princess Leia holding the plans to the Death Star, saying hope. You know, like you should have, like, I get that that's the way Game of Thrones and, you know, whatever decides to tell their stories, where they beat you over the head with pain and suffering in order to make you connect with the characters and understand that this is a real fight and they could lose. But in Star Wars, that's not the way Star Wars works. At least not to me. Star Wars works because the good guys always end up winning eventually. So yeah, I feel like that need to challenge our heroes to the point of, if they die, that they have to die in order to succeed, and they have to actually die in order for their sacrifice to mean something. It's kind of counterintuitive to me as a Star Wars fan, at least my experience as a Star Wars fan.
Right, and it does get back to just that whole tone and atmosphere, because that's why Filoni was probably more shocked than anything, because he's trying to, again, not fit the model of the original trilogy, but use some of the tropes that he grew up with and that he learned from Lucas. So I think it shocked him in that respect. Personally, I thought that there were some, only because maybe the whole Rogue One ending as well, and just looking at the timeline, perhaps it made sense for them to. I mean, but again, too, the children's show aspect and coming it from that point of view, I think the one that I was expecting the most and the one that they just handled the best, and we've talked about this, so you know how I feel about it, but the Kanan death is the one that they needed to kind of do and get right, and it couldn't have been better, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is a character sacrifice that means something.
Yes.
But if they would have done that with every single character in the show, that's kind of overplaying on that, at least in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, and it does definitely like separate. It makes that death a lot more memorable in the end. And we also had we had Gregor, like one of the clones probably.
God, that line, man.
Oh, I know.
Something that we chose to believe in. Ah, God. I felt like I had been shot in the heart.
That definitely, the Rex line is even kind of brutal too, where he's like, "We did it, we did it." Like it was just the whole clones thing, right? Like they are the band of brothers. It was a nice moment from Gregor's last lines to Rex being the captain, and just like, yes, we did it, we found it. It was great.
Yeah, it was freaking fantastic.
Yeah. You know what was good too is it was quick. You know what I mean? Like to hit those last lines, like it wasn't drawn out, or it was just the stamp on the end of the Clone Wars or the Clone Trooper story in Rebels too.
Yeah, it really was, and I'm very glad with the way that they did add. That the whole story of Rebels did end in the death of Kanan and the death of a clone, and that wrapping up of the clone arc. And I think that any more than that would have been a little bit too much, at least for me personally as a fan.
Yeah, I think in the end it worked out fine. Like it was perfect. You can't force more in if it's not part of the story, and they didn't keep everyone. Kanan was the one that I think everyone saw coming. It was only a matter, like in my little preview video for the season, I think that was number one for me. I wanted Kanan to go out in a very Kanan Jedi-ish type of way, because I'm a big fan of Kanan. I love A New Dawn. I love the Kanan comic. So I think having him, go out with I don't want to say with a bang here, because he literally did, but I think it was very fitting of the character. We said a lot about Ezra too, from season beginning to season end. But if you take Kanan from the beginning of A New Dawn, or even that Kanan comic, man, he had like 3 versions of himself as well. So
yeah.
Can we, do you have any thoughts on Spartan's question regarding the ending at the Battle of Scarif?
Yeah, that's a good point. I see where you're coming from, Spart, and I can empathize with you a little bit, because I would have loved to have seen Hera flying at the Battle of Scarif. But
just to be certain, this is technically the finale ends a year before the Battle of Scarif, right? Or
I don't know. I don't know. I would say that it would be like a year before the Battle of Scarif, or maybe even 6 months before the Battle of Scarif.
Okay,
or maybe even just before the Battle of Scarif. I could easily see this happening just before the Battle of Scarif, because the Empire never comes back.
Right. So, yeah, and that's the way Filoni kind of set it out too. Like he's going to have to. They can't go back to Lothal, because he's going to have to immediately deal with the Death Star being destroyed. So he's got bigger things to focus on.
So it could be like a week later afterwards.
See, I like a little more time though.
Stuff.
I think. How do you feel about that? Like, it's technically listed as 1 BBY, so like somewhere within a year. I like to think that it's like at least 6 months. I'm not sure if I don't know if a week seems a little short. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like to think that I'll get into why. I'll let you finish your thought there, Andrew. But
Yeah, thank you. No, I think that yeah, 6 months is probably the best because I just, as I said one week, I was like, well, yeah, but then Hera is supposed to be there readying the defenses of Lothal because they're supposed to be getting ready for an Imperial counterattack. So that would kind of hurt her character if it is that one week. So yeah, I'd actually say in that split second, I went, you know what? Yeah, no, I think 6 months would probably be like the optimal time frame because I think that a year is a little bit too long because that leaves a year for the Empire to come back to Lothal and, you know, shut it down.
Right. See,
go ahead.
For me, I think too, because it's funny. Like, it's a great question from Spartan because I had always imagined it. Maybe we wouldn't see the actual Battle of Scarif, but maybe like some sort of a reference that, okay, they're going right into the Battle of Scarif. But the way that Rebels ended, I almost like to have that period, and 6 months or whatever it be, 3 months or a significant period of time anyway. I almost like to think that both stories have a little bit more time to breathe on their own.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how I would feel about Lothal being the initial momentum that kind of gets the rebellion going. I do like to still think of the Battle of Scarif and them stealing the Death Star plans being the legitimate, like, this is the spark of hope that the rebellion needed that carries forward into A New Hope and then carries forward into the destruction of the Death Star. I do think the liberation of Lothal is important, but I do almost like to think of the two stories as separate. If it was like a week, it would just seem like they're jumping from victory to victory to victory. I like the fact that they won at Lothal. The Empire maybe builds back up. Again, the rebellion's still very fearful, but they have that spark of hope to start the Battle of Scarif. So I think in that sense, I kind of like a little bit more of a break in between. But I was kind of like Spartan. I've this whole time, especially after Rogue One came out, I was thinking, well, it would almost be a natural point to end at the Battle of Scarif. But now I kind of like to think of a little bit more time in between.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. It'd be, like something that you said at the beginning of that, where you were saying that you wanted some more room to allow the story to breathe. I really enjoy behind this. I understand a lot of the fans, probably the one that jumps into my head is Steele Saunders of the Steel Wars podcast, having issues with the whole, and behind that tree on Endor, this character was doing that. And I can understand where they're coming from on that, although I do disagree. I really enjoy it when we see things from a different perspective. We see the Battle of Endor from a different perspective. We see the Battle of Scarif from a different perspective. We see the Order 66 from a different perspective, like with Kanan in the Kanan comics. I really enjoy that because there's a nice fancy word called Sonder, Soder, and it is the sudden realization that everyone around you is what is it? Everyone around you lives a life just as complex and intertwined as yours. Like, you know, you ever have that feeling where you're sitting at, you know, a bus stop or walking through the mall or whatever, and you have that kind of realization that that person has a name and they've got grandparents who also gave them this as a kid at their 7th birthday party. You know, you have that feeling, and I think that makes the galaxy feel much more alive. But when you have Rebel faction or Rebel unit in the Ghost crew and the Spectre crew, end up, if you had them at the Battle of Scarif, it would kind of diminish Rogue One's place in that, because we saw the Spectre crew and the Ghost crew do all these incredible things throughout Rebels, and you would end up being left with the question, well, but why didn't the Ghost crew do that? Because the Ghost crew already knows how to do that kind of stuff that the Rogue One crew does.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those reasons, I think too, it was just a good spot to end. And I think Filoni may have tipped his hat there in regard, saying it wasn't going to end at the Battle of Scarif. But I think the way that it ultimately played out was,
Yeah, I think he said it like Star Wars Celebration or something like that in Orlando, before season 4 even started. I think he said something along the lines of, in an interview or something, or at a panel or whatever. He's like, "No, we're not ending at the Battle of Scarif."
yeah,
Sorry, guys. God, that's terrible, Dave Filoni. But yeah, it definitely, yeah, he definitely tipped his hat about that, and I'm incredibly grateful that we have Dave Filoni running the show, because if it was me, yeah, it probably would have ended the Battle of the Scarif, and it wouldn't have been as good. At least not.
I think about that all the time. Yeah, I've thought about that a lot this week too, right? Like what would I have done differently? Because I wouldn't have done that. It didn't occur to me a lot of those,
I
most
would
of those
never
things,
have brought in
right?
space whales. I
I
would have
know.
been terrified of bringing in space whales because of everybody that hated space whales. I have always loved space whales personally, but the Purgles. But I understand that I'm in the minority of the fandom that actually really enjoyed that episode. So if I was creating the end of season 4, I wouldn't have brought in space whales. No way in hell. I would
Yeah,
have
well,
found a
that's the
different way to
thing,
end
right?
it, and it wouldn't
That's
have
the
been as
thing.
good.
If you would have told me way back when Thrawn was announced that he was going to return to Rebels, if you would have said his exit was going to be him being trapped in the Chimera with a bunch of Purgles trapping him and then going into hyperspace, I would have thought, oh, that can't work in a million years. How would they do that? But things work within the context of the story sometimes, and
Yeah.
I was a fan of it too.
Yeah, I at least personally, I really like the direction that Lucasfilm is going with. They kind of do have a hold my beer kind of attitude. Like, yeah, I know you don't think this is going to work, but I'm going to make it work. And boom, it works perfectly.
And sometimes you don't know if it'll work until you see it, right? Like how
Yeah.
you can't really imagine that scene. Like imagine seeing that on paper,
Yeah, like,
Like
wait, what? He dies? Well, I mean, for what it's worth, I did see Thrawn's demise in Legends on paper, and I didn't really like that ending either. But I like Thrawn's quote demise, Thrawn's defeat. He doesn't die,
mhm.
as confirmed in Rebels Recon. But I think that I thought that Thrawn's death in Legends was a little bit. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel true to the character, at least not to me. But that's just because the Nogri literally record their history through art, and that's Thrawn's whole deal is art. And
Yeah.
he never bothered. Like he has Wedge Antilles' entire manifesto memorized, but he didn't have time to do even a cursory glance at any Nogri murals to realize their connection with Vader. Really?
Certainly a regrettable oversight there.
Yeah, it's like,
That one,
really?
Thrawn, yeah.
He didn't like, art is his thing. How did he not see that? Whereas the Purgles, at least for me, I thought that, like, yeah, that's all the Force. That's all the Force doing its thing, and that's Thrawn's blind spot is the Force. So it makes sense to me.
Hmm. Yeah, I saw there was a comment on your review. Somebody had taken the time to really think through the question about Thrawn and whether or not he was defeated, because I have seen that a little bit out there too, and a lot of people have asked me, like, was he defeated too easily, or how do you think it all went down? I think the thing is like, in that situation, like, yes, he was defeated, but they had to throw so much at him at that point. Even somebody like Thrawn can take only so much. Like, how's he gonna? He can't predict the the Purgles coming in out of nowhere, and I don't think it diminishes the character. I think some people do, but for example, it doesn't diminish Vader for me that he couldn't stop Luke from destroying the Death Star. Technically, he lost. Like, why didn't Vader see Han Solo coming out of you know randomly to intervene? So just in that regard, yes, Thrawn might have been, defeated, but I don't think it diminishes the character.
No.
I think if anything, like the way he fought back and just the way that whole scene went, for me, it kind of elevates the character.
Yeah, that's one problem that I have with Legends Thrawn personally is that whenever somebody comes at me with the raise a Mary Sue argument, I always point to the Thrawn trilogy and go, did you read this? Like, do you pay attention to what, like, Thrawn is perfect. Like, perfect in the Thrawn trilogy. He doesn't screw up, with the exception of the final time when he screws up. And that's just it, is that it's him screwing up. It's not the hero. Like, that's honestly my one problem with the Thrawn trilogy in general, is that Thrawn is perfect to the point of the only time that he ends up losing, and the only way that our heroes win, is because he screws up, not because our heroes win. You know what I mean?
Yep, I definitely know. That was always one the big critique I've always seen for the Thrawn trilogy. I think they remedied that a little bit. We discussed that in the newest Thrawn novel, just kind of getting inside his head a little bit more. But
yeah,
I know what you mean, and I know we have more questions, and I'd hate to drag this into a Thrawn discussion, but do you mind if I just throw a Thrawn question your way quickly here? Because
please go right ahead.
I think that the important aspect too is like Ezra could have killed Thrawn. Like he had no problem. Like he was killing some of the stormtroopers, or maybe it was the Death Troopers at that point. And like he didn't kill Thrawn. He captured him, didn't he?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering too, like there has to be a basis for this as well. And I'm wondering if it originates perhaps with Kanan at all, but it seems like they wanted Thrawn out of the picture in his fight against the rebellion, but perhaps they wanted him for something else as well. And I only bring that up because I'm really hoping that we see a Thrawn and Ezra like teaming up to do something greater outside of maybe the known galaxy, perhaps in the unknown regions. And I say that too because I know Thrawn, like he offered in the Thrawn novel, I think it was Night Swan, if I'm getting the name right, but his enemy, he offered him a chance to go fight with the Chiss. So I'm just hoping that, that story is really one that they jump into soon. And we get to see both of them kind of team up together. But it was just interesting because they did have to get Thrawn out of there. I think if you go back and read those early interviews with Filoni when it was announced he'd be coming back, I think they knew from the beginning like he's going to have stories after Rebels. So I think the way that they did it was great for our favorite Chiss Grand Admiral here.
Yeah. I'm really hoping that they end up letting Dave Filoni do some directing stuff for Dave Filoni definitely shines when he's in complete control of a story. Right. But I would really like to see him, cut his chops doing some directing or some writing for the new live action series that was announced by Jon Favreau? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm really hoping that they let him direct some of those, direct at least one or two episodes, just to see what he can do with live action stuff. I'm hoping that they let him break out. I don't want to say break out because animation is kind of seen a little bit. Animation is kind of, looked down upon in, right. That is a lower form of artistry. But I want to see him, go moving to a different medium going with a live action show or something like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. At this point you kind of, if you're gonna, like, why not, right?
Yeah.
Like, why not just roll the dice and let him direct an episode of the live action show?
Heck yeah, that'd be nice. I hope that they do that. But
I hope they announce to the next seasons, like the animated series soon too.
Yeah,
I'm kind of dying to know.
Well, they did a film and TV copyright for the title Star Wars Resistance.
Oh well, there you go.
So just saying,
that's the rumor.
Yeah, like the Forces of Destiny copyright is very like if you look at like the Forces of Destiny copyright, and then you look at the Star Wars Resistance copyright, they're two completely different beasts. Like one is like. Star Wars Resistance copyright is like 18 pages longer. It's insane. It looks almost exactly the same as the copyright Star Wars Rebels. When I was reading through it. So maybe that's the way they're going to go. But anyways, thank you so much, Spart, for your comment. Like I said, guys, go check him out on Twitch. He's an excellent Twitch streamer, and he does lots of Galaxy of Heroes runs, and I think he's got a guild going and stuff too. So go check him out. Anyways, comment number 3. from David Dupont. I think it might be David Dupont. I know he's French. You live kind of close to Quebec, is that right? David Dupont or David Dupont?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure if they pronounce their T's or not.
You're Canadian. You know how French works, right?
You had a couple years of French there in elementary school. I would have said DuPont, but
yeah. All right. Well, anyways, David, thank you so much for your comment, and I'm very happy that Kanan and Ezra have an explanation for the time period of the trilogy. In other words, where Kanan and Ezra are gone. Why Kanan and Ezra aren't around for the original trilogy. I wanted them all dead after season 1, but part of me didn't. There's a good personage. Yeah, they're excellent characters, David. For Ahsoka, I like the new look, but I need more info. Yeah. We left her in the world between worlds. It was okay for me, but seeing her at the end with Sabine, that's not enough. That's not enough, Filoni. Ahsoka lives. Good finale with every guest personage and the hyperspace whales that I forgot about. I'm already looking forward to seeing what's next. Yes, indeed, David. There's a lot of bits in here that I want to touch on. First of all, the new look for Ahsoka. I love that Gandalf the White look of Ahsoka. I know that everybody's memeing it up on Twitter and stuff, but I don't care. It looks amazing. I'm so happy that it's so, like, I went back just for funsies. I went back and watched the Clone Wars movie where Ahsoka's introduced.
Oh man.
Yeah. And like, if you watch that at like right after watching the series finale, it is freaking incredible. It is so good to see the difference, and just it's very similar to the same sort of feeling that I got when maybe not to the same extent, but that feeling that I got during The Last Jedi with Luke looking at the twin suns before he fades away. And then going back and watching A New Hope with the twin sunsets, with the binary sunset.
Right.
And you just get that feeling of, you're going to do all right, kid. You're going to do all right. And it just knowing the massive amount of stuff that happens in between first moment of character to now this final, or maybe not final, but this latest revelation, this latest evolution of the character. I love that character design so much.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, Andrew, but is there a character in canon that we know from like the original Old Republic Jedi Order that survives longer than Ahsoka at this point?
I mean,
like
you're right. She is.
So like, imagine to go back to the movie in her introduction to Anakin and Obi-Wan there. Like, God, yeah, you're going to do all right, kid. Yeah, no kidding, huh? What a fabulous character. The Ahsoka novel is actually one that I suggest all the time, too. That's actually a great novel, too, if people haven't read that. But
yeah, I'm actually going to be doing because I never did a review on it because it came out before I started doing YouTube stuff. I need to see. I'm going to be doing a review on that probably sometime next week.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Fantastic book.
To read it now in the light of the finale here would be really good. Mm-hmm. To go back to the look, I don't know if you saw a Filoni interview, but he was asked basically like, is the look important? And obviously, yeah, he confirms, yes, it is important. It was just the thing where you see it and you're just like, whoa. Like, that's why I'm leaning towards almost like a new direction for the character entirely. Like, she's almost, if you didn't see her face, you wouldn't recognize that character at all from the way she's dressed. So,
no.
I mean,
with her Weku or whatever,
yeah.
But
yeah, but I mean,
still,
just like, the thing though that Filoni says too, just about that look, is it does tie into the journey that she takes to after Malachor. So I don't know. Like I said, that one, as cool as it would be to see Ahsoka and Sabine's story with searching for Ezra, this whole Malachor journey is kind of like the thing that gives me goosebumps about the Ahsoka story more than even that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I read you like the most Filoni quote ever?
Please go right ahead.
So he was asked like the interviewer obviously kind of kept trying to pull a little bit more out of him for the like some interpretation of why she was dressed like that, but he says people are already trying to guess like what the design means, and he goes, is it just a staff? Is it some kind of saber staff? And then he goes, that would be exciting.
Yeah. Screw you, Dave.
Like,
Dave Filoni.
It's like, you're so close to the vest, but yeah, it's just like, wouldn't that be exciting? It's like, yes, it would. Like,
yes, it would be exciting. Well, I mean, like you have that even in like I saw on the Star Wars show during that same Q&A. I imagine that it's in there, but I feel so bad because I'm one of those guys who doesn't acknowledge, like I barely even register the actors' names or performers' names, but I can't remember his name. The guy that plays Turk in Scrubs, he was at the premiere. Apparently, he's a mega-sized Star Wars fan, and he was like, "So when are we going to get our Ahsoka and Sabine or Ahsoka Sabine spin-off story?" And he's like, and Dave Filoni responds with, "Is that something you'd like to see?" Dave, yes, damn it. You're in a room full of Rebels fanboys and fangirls. Come on, like, yes, of course we want to see it. He's so
everyone just is collectively like nodding their heads. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, can you make it happen?
Like, Dave, you son of a.
I think he's. I don't know how he feels about that though. You know, just from like watching that video, he's almost. He doesn't want the next project to just immediately just continue the story of these Rebels characters. Yeah. It could be like a situation how Ahsoka was brought into Rebels. It could be done that way, but it's almost a tough spot to be in if you don't want to just keep retelling this story, but it's the story that everyone wants to know at this point. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out.
Yeah, we will see. Let's see here. Let's we already kind of touched on the wanted them all dead after season 1, but just to reiterate, I think that the obsession with death is a little bit too much for me personally, and I'm so glad that they didn't take at least to me, I think it would have been an easy way out of just killing everybody.
Yeah, you know who we missed too, who had an on-screen death? Price, although not part of the rebellion. What did you think of that Price death?
That was a little bit weird for me, to be honest with you, because from what I remember of her in the Thrawn novel, she's very much a self-preservation person.
Right, like a Phasma kind of a character.
So it's a little, very much like Phasma. I'd actually never made that connection in between the two. But it was a little bit weird that she decided to die, that she chose to die for the Empire, which felt a little bit weird to me, at least to me, at least. I mean, I've seen a lot of people mention that they thought that it was a perfect death for the character of Price, and I'm like, not to me, but that's just my one critique, I guess, for the series finale.
I see exactly what you're saying, because if you do go back to the Thrawn novel, it was perhaps, why wouldn't she just take the opportunity there to survive? She doesn't seem like the type of person that would, go down with the Empire there. But I think as just on-screen deaths go, I mean, I thought that I kind of gave her a bit of a nod there. It's like she went out like a like a badass, I'll just say. I mean, I thought it was done well.
Yeah, for sure. It was so good. So good.
Well, the thing is, too, there's also some payoff there with what she did at the end of the Thrawn novel. I won't get into it too much, but who knows? Yeah. Maybe she was at the end of her run. She kind of realized that there was going to be consequences for her losing Lothal anyway. So
yeah, she would have been. Even if she wouldn't have died, she would have had to rely on the rebels to make sure that she wasn't killed. And right. She probably wasn't too hot on that idea, so she just decided to go out on her own terms.
And you know what? They couldn't really flip another character, especially her, in my opinion.
No.
Like, they already had Callus, right? And the only way she's going to go out is... Yeah.
Callus's change of heart was done incredibly well. I thought that the end was a little bit goofy, but it made my heart sing with Callus, because Callus like the whole like, oh, he goes to Wasan, to, you know, New Wasan or whatever they're calling it. And, you know, he ends up being accepted and living with them and da da da. And I thought that was a little bit goofy but it also made me really happy for the whole, you know, to like, there's been lots of goofy thoughts going around, especially on Twitter and stuff, of before the series finale, of the shipping of Callus and Zeb. And, you know, like, they end up going back to Lasan. Like, they're like, I think it was Amy Wishman on Twitter. She said something along the lines of how she's hoping that the end of the season, this was like 3 weeks ago or whatever, she's hoping that at the end of the season, Callus and Zeb retire to New Wasan and raise their little Wasat babies, little Wasat
like
war orphan babies. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I know that's kind of goofy, and I'm not a big shipper kind of fan, but.
So is a shipper, does that just mean like when you pair two people up together and
like the Raylo crowd, those are shippers.
Oh, okay.
You know, whatever. The Canera or Karen, as a lot of people are calling it.
Yeah, I don't know about that one for Zeb and Callus, but
it's not necessarily being taken in a serious context where like, yes, this makes perfect dramatic sense for the story and the characters. It's more just goofy Star Wars fans being Star Wars fans, the positivity side of Star Wars fans being Star Wars fans.
I do know what you mean too. It did kind of feel a little bit out of place. They're like, oh, the reveal that Kanan and Hera had a child, and the reveal that Ahsoka is still around, and the reveal that they're going to look for Ezra, and then the reveal that Zeb and Callus went to New Lasat. Yeah, it just kind of was like,
okay.
Yeah,
but I mean, what else are they going to do? I mean,
that's the thing. It was lost along the way a bit too, I think, right? I mean,
I think in my personal opinion, though, I think the only better way they could have done it is, you know, he was Callus went on to become a war hero of the rebellion or whatever, and like maybe he took up a post as, like, you could even wrap up his character and say that he took up a post as as the defense as, you know, the head of defense for the mobile New Republic capital or something like that. But then that would also kind of end his story on a down note because, well, he didn't do his job right.
Right. It didn't work out so well, but
But
it was what it was.
It was a good enough ending. It wasn't an ending that made me go, "Murr." It was just kind of like, really? Okay. Whatever.
I think there's some interesting stories there with those two. I mean, I would have liked it explored a bit more in the TV series, because I really did. I forget what that episode was called, but the one with primarily focused on those two characters. I actually liked the episode.
You're talking about the one where they end up on the moon of Geonosis or whatever?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was incredible. And for what it's worth, I was so happy to see New Wasan be brought up, because, my God, the music and just the imagery of that episode where they find it. Oh my good Lord. That was an incredible episode. I loved it so much. Like the big, massive chorus and the score and it was.
God, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that too, because I can barely remember it.
Yeah, the journey through the nebula or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, it was so freaking good. I loved it so much.
It really hit its stride, eh?
Yeah.
I said it was bittersweet, the end. I don't know. Yeah. I think you in your review, you said maybe not bittersweet in that way, but I almost have like a Clone Wars feeling where, not that this one ended early, because they had the chance to kind of finish the story. But I do, like, if they had one more season, I wonder. You know what's weird too, if I can just quickly touch on this? Yeah. Would you agree that this season was the one that focused on the actual, like, main crew the most, like Kanan and Ezra and Sabine and like, they focused on them the most, and for me it turned out to be the best season. So I don't know, I think that focus might have got lost along the way, kind of relying on outside characters a bit much, but I love that at the end of it all, the focus on those characters are what made the show. And it was an emotional ending because they wrapped up the stories of those characters.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would say that though that the character of Sabine is probably the one that's least wrapped up.
True.
You know, we know that Rex went on to become a war hero. Hera went on to become more of a war hero. And I guess Rex went on to become a hero of yet another war, but whatever.
Yeah.
You know, even Ahsoka is kind of wrapped up a little bit better than even Sabine's, because we have no, like, did she just stay on Lothal to keep it protected? Like, did she like become like the defense minister for Lothal or whatever?
Right.
Was she the person in charge of the defenses while Hera was off, you know, fighting the Battle of Scarif and the Battle of Endor and the battle, you know, whatever?
Right.
Was that what she was doing? Or, you know, whatever happened to Mandalore? Like, I'm guessing that Mandalore is still a thing in the new trilogy, the sequel trilogy, because, well, they Sabine probably would have, like, there's a story there in the event that something happened to Mandalore, something negative happened with Mandalore, you know, Bo-Katan's revolution or whatever didn't go well. There's a story to be told of Sabine's reluctance to, like, it's either go back to her old home or keep her promise to Ezra.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so like, because that Mandalorian storyline isn't wrapped up, because we don't know the end of that storyline for Mandalore, and because Sabine's character is so wrapped up in that, because that's open, that means that the character of Sabine is open, at least for me. So I personally, if I could get one specific character comic, it might not even be Ahsoka. It might be Sabine. But I also adore Sabine as a character. Like the Trials of the Darksaber episode in season 3.
Love that episode.
My God. And the music for the Sabine's theme is just incredible. The music, that theme that starts playing at the end of Trials of the Darksaber. Kevin Kiner damn well better get some more work at Lucasfilm. I don't care whether or not it's more animation, or if he ends up scoring the TV show, or if he ends up scoring, you know, one or more of the Rian Johnson trilogies, or one or more of the Rian Johnson movies, or one or more of the Dan and Dave trilogies. I don't care.
Right.
He needs to be put in charge of some sort of. He needs to be. I would personally, if I could choose one composer to pick up where John Williams is leaving off, because John Williams is leaving Lucasfilm and leaving Star Wars after Episode 9, which makes sense. The guy's like in his 80s. I can't say I blame him for wanting to retire.
It's amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Jeez.
But if I could pick one person to like take up that mantle, it'd be Kevin Kiner in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I just remembering the Trials of the Darksaber, though, that was one, and I think that was a two-parter, right? Those were the episodes that I think started when right after Rogue One. I forget exactly where they were. Yeah, that
sounds about right. I think those episodes came out, I think it was the first two-parter that we got after Rogue One.
Right.
Was the Saw Geonosis bit.
Yes.
And then the next two episodes were the Trials of the Darksaber and the one before it, or whatever, the one that set it up.
That's right. Yeah, I just remember, like, off the heels of Rogue One and then coming back into to Rebels, thinking like, oh, this series just took another step up. I love that whole, even the Sabine aspects were great, because I enjoyed the character, but I mean, I don't think she really registered with me like some of the other characters. But yeah, that was a defining moment for Sabine for me, but then also for Kanan too. I think that episode was fantastic from his point of view. And again, too, just going back to it, like the way he came full circle, even from that point to his eventual death in this final season, it was really good. It was just well done. I keep saying it, but I mean, these characters change so much. I'm a big fan of, call me old-fashioned, but I like character arcs. Starting in one spot and ending up in another one. A very Luke Skywalker-ish arc. So I thought it was great. Did I ask you? Maybe I did ask you already if you thought Kanan ended up as a Jedi. There's so much to be. I'm going through the Kanan novel. Or excuse me, not the novel, the comic. So I got Kanan thoughts running through my head at this point. But
yeah, no, I definitely do. I think I think he went out in the most Jedi way possible.
Good, me too.
Yeah, I think that he became more of a Jedi than most of the Jedi in the prequel trilogy.
Yes,
especially in that moment. Excuse me, because. That's one reason why so many Jedi didn't end up ascending into the cosmic force. Even Kanan kind of did, at least enough to be able to, point the way towards the Jedi Temple and, allow a final goodbye from both Sabine and not Sabine, excuse me, Hera and Ezra.
Right.
He managed to make that ascension because he made a selfless sacrifice in order to save his friends, to save people that he needed to save. And, the prequel trilogy, Jedi mostly were killed cowering, or they were ambushed.
Right.
Which is why they never managed to make that entrance into the cosmic force. At least that's the way I interpret it.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, no, I appreciate that point of view because I kind of had the exact same thoughts as well. So I don't know. The ending for Kanan couldn't have been better in my mind. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. But anyways, I think we're good with David's comment. Thank you so much, David, for the comment. I guess we'll move on to our final comment, which is from, I forget who, Anime Guy 10 million, one of the oldest subscribers on the channel. Actually, thank you so much for commenting on most every video. Thank you for your viewership, as always, Anime Guy. Alrighty. So, Anime Guy 10 million says, I really liked the finale. I would like to see the gaps filled in, mostly because that's kind of what expanded universes do. They expand the universe and fill the gaps in the story. I feel like the epilogue opened the door for a whole slew of new stories to tell involving the sequel trilogy era of Star Wars. I want to see what became of Ezra. I want to see a wise Ahsoka and Sabine searching for Ezra. I want to know what happened to Thrawn, which brings me to my next point. If Thrawn is now lost in space, what's going to happen with the second book? Is it going to take place during Rebels? Yeah, I knew going into it that, oh, okay, so he survives Rebels and then Alliances is going to take him out of the picture for the original trilogy. But nope. Unless he comes back, unless the opening of Thrawn Alliances is Thrawn waking up and going, "Where's that Ezra boy?" And then he has a little bit of expository dialogue, and then he manages to make his way back to the Empire. Unless that's the thing, and then Alliances ends up taking him back out again. I don't know how, where this time frame is going to be for this book.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I've always had it in my head that Alliances was basically going to pick up right where the first novel left off, with that scene with Vader and Thrawn.
Oh, see, no, that's interesting because for me, I always felt that this was going to take place after Rebels because I always felt that the Thrawn book, the first Thrawn book, reminded me of. It made me feel like that ended right where season 3 of Rebels picked up.
Interesting.
So, yeah, maybe that's going to take place during Rebels, or maybe maybe it is only going to be a week or whatever, the week in between the end of Thrawn and the beginning of season 3 of Rebels.
Right.
That might be where it takes place.
And then maybe they could do a Vader Thrawn story during that same timeline of Rebels, I guess, but
yeah, there are 6 or 7 episode, distances where Thrawn isn't even a thing at all.
That's right.
In Rebels. So maybe that's during those breaks is where they end up putting in Thrawn. I don't know. Or where they put Thrawn Alliances. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, I do hope that it is something like that. Like, I wouldn't want it to be um, like picking up after the finale and then Thrawn coming back so much. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think I have it imagined just in my mind that it's almost like a sequel novel that Thrawn and Vader are going to have a kind of like a a buddy novel adventure. I guess kind of like the Tarkin novel with
Yeah.
Vader and Tarkin figuring something out, but I don't know. I would almost prefer something like that. I think at this point, I almost just want Thrawn kind of gone, doing his own thing, separate from the Empire. But
Um,
if they pulled it together, man, that would be
um,
interesting too.
yeah, I don't know. I think I know that it's a childish. I want answers. So I'm leaning towards wanting them to pick up after Rebels with Thrawn alliances, but that won't work. I don't know. Maybe Vader finds Thrawn after Rebels in the unknown regions while he's on a ranging mission to try and to do stuff for the Emperor.
See, okay, now you've piqued my interest here, Andrew. I have to admit. See, and there's a nice little connection between
And then
Anakin, well, old Anakin and Thrawn too.
yeah,
So
and then Thrawn doesn't, and then because of interactions in between Thrawn and Vader, Thrawn decides to go back to the Chiss Ascendancy.
okay, well, see, we're writing a a pretty good treatment for it at this point, but
Yeah,
see, I never
there
even
we go.
thought,
I managed to find a reason why I can be upset that the Thrawn Alliance's book isn't what I want. Haha. I've fulfilled my duty as a Star Wars fan.
well, even if Alliances isn't that, then like something like that for the the new story post Rebels finale would be awesome for Thrawn, but I don't know. For whatever reason I've never even given thought to perhaps Thrawn coming back, like that story of Alliances being Thrawn coming back, but it's wide open at this point. I think for like my wish too is you have your wanting answers. I think I just want to see Captain Pelion in this Alliances book. Like we know Eli Vanto is gone with the Chiss Ascendancy, so maybe we could see some Thrawn and Pelion.
Yes, I'm a little bit concerned because they name dropped Pelion in this series finale, but then the transmission gets cut off and they say that the fleet is gone or the blockade is gone. So I'm wondering if they just were like, here's Captain Pelion and he's dead. Like they literally picked him up, put him in front of the camera, and then threw him into a grave.
That was my huge. It was such like a quick 180. People have been tweeting some cool things at me though. I think like Pablo Hidalgo has said like it's too early to tell if he was dead, and other people have pointed me to articles. So I don't know. He could very well it'd be like the quickest return to the canon ever if that happened, and I'd be disappointed. But I'm holding out hope. Well, that's the thing too. If it is post. Well, I guess too, if Thrawn comes back, then it would matter. But I think the bigger chance for a Thrawn Pelion book connection here would be pre-Rebels. So I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm hoping that it just takes place right after the first Thrawn novel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they decide to do. I don't know. Now that I came up with that idea of, Thrawn being found in the unknown regions again by Vader post Rebels, pre-episode 4. And then, that now that I came up with that idea, I'm like, I really want that to be what Alliances is. We'll see.
That would be so interesting. But even too, just now that you're saying it, there is no reason for why Thrawn can't be within the unknown regions now too, like right after the finale. The interesting aspect is like I looked into some things. There's no reason for why those Purgles couldn't have gone into the unknown regions. So
yeah, they're the one. They literally invented hyperspace travel.
Yeah.
Or at least they're the oldest users of hyperspace travel that we know of.
Right.
In the canon. So I imagine that they know their way around the interstate system.
Well, that's exactly it. And who knows? Maybe he's in the unknown regions at this point, even now. So
yeah, we'll see.
Out of like all of it's just so much, right? Like the Ahsoka aspect, the Thrawn aspect. There was another one that I'm forgetting now, but between all of those, of course, I'm going to say Thrawn, but I don't know. The fact that we're left with so many open doors is. Usually I was like you because I've watched your review and I like, at the end of a book you can put it down and say that was a good story and we know where it began. and where it ended and how we got to the end. But I do like that storytelling generally, but in the same way, the fact that, like, even you mentioned, like, Star Wars just doesn't end. The fact that we now have these characters that I all love, that I love most of these characters here, that the fact that they're going to have stories be told even after Rebels is a good place to be as a fan, I would say.
Yeah, the Star Wars is never going to die.
Yeah.
Even if you know, Disney feels that it's no longer financially viable property, you know, in 10 or 15 years or whatever. You know, if they do end up doing that, somebody else will buy the rights and start doing something. Or there's always going to be fans making new content. Like, you go on fanfiction.net or even like Unmistakably Star Wars or something, and there's so much good fan created content. Star Wars will never die. The stories will always continue. And that's one thing that makes me so happy to be a Star Wars fan. Like, we know that Tolkien can't write more stuff, and no one's going to take up that mantle. But, and as wonderful as the stories are, eventually they will pass on into legends as they were. You know, they'll stay alive and everything, but there's not, you know, a massive thriving, at least not to my knowledge, there's not a massive thriving culture of creating fan content, fan films, fan novels, fan fiction in general, for, you know, Tolkien or whatever. Any of these other franchises, Star Wars is timeless, and it will remain to be timeless until there is no more humans left.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I agree, and the fact that it keeps going, I think, is the added benefit of having Filoni tell some of these stories as well. But I know, like, we've talked about it, that there probably a lot of stories are on hold until the sequel trilogy is done.
Yeah.
So we have until the end of next year, and again, this is all just speculation, because I don't even think maybe Filoni doesn't even know, or a lot of these things are unknown by the higher ups. But if it's 3 years and we're still waiting on some of these stories, I might start to get a little bit impatient, but I don't know. I think the fact that they'll always be there and we can always hope for them is maybe enough at this point. So
yeah, well, I'm going to be doing, I actually think I've got a video idea of I think I'm going to do another entry into my headcanon playlist. And I'm just gonna, I haven't been doing it recently just because, you know, work and everything. I can only make about a video a week, if that. Right. So what I've been doing, I've been concentrating on other stuff, doing reviews or doing Star Warsology stuff or whatever. But I think I'm going to be doing a headcanon video sooner rather than later, where I'm going to explain what my headcanon is until Lucasfilm decides to explain it. What happened to Jason Syndulla, what happened to Ahsoka, what happened to etc. What my headcanon is until something ends up coming along to explain it.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point too, just with Jason Syndulla as well, because there could be a big, significant story there as well.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a significant story. It might, kind of a spoiler for that video that I'm thinking about. My idea for Jason Syndulla is that, well, we know that in the canon and everything that Luke doesn't start training new Jedi until like a couple years before a few years before TFA. Like,
that's right.
He spends like 2 decades just searching the galaxy.
For stuff,
looking for stuff post Return of the Jedi. So it could be that, Hera does come up to Luke and says, "Hey, this kid was this is my kid. His father was a Jedi, etc., etc. Could you train him? Because his powers are getting to be too much for me or whatever." And Luke just goes, "No, I'm busy." Or on the other hand, Hera is fearful of losing her son to the same fate that she lost Kanan to, so she protects him. She doesn't hide his Force abilities, but she doesn't go seeking Luke because she doesn't want him to be trained as a Jedi. She doesn't want to lose her son in the same way that she lost Kanan.
Yeah, that's
So
really interesting. The fact that I mean too, and what do you think about the Jason name? People have made
I love that
connections
so
with the
much.
yeah,
I'm
right when
so
they
glad.
said Jason, and I think the spelling is confirmed to be the same as Jason Solo, but
Uh-huh.
right when they said Jason Sandula, I was like, oof, that's a nice little connection to
Jason
legends there.
Syndulla Snoke.
Oh yeah, yeah. Did you see I
Uh,
guess the Ezra's Snoke is still out there, I guess, huh?
I don't. Well, we'll put it
Not
this
a
way.
not a fan of the Ezra
Well,
Snoke theory, or
I can't give you spoilers because you haven't read it yet, but read the TLJ novelization.
oh, okay, nice. I'm glad there's something in there that
There's
touches on this.
it's very nebulous, but it definitely does give you the feeling of there being a story that Lucasfilm already has for where Snoke is from,
Okay,
or at
that's
least
good.
a general direction, and it throws many theories out the window. So let's just say that.
Jeez, I got to get on that then.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but overall, did it was a good novelization
Oh my
then, or
god.
did you feel? Oh, really?
At least
Okay.
in my opinion, I love the novelizations, with the exception of the Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi novelization. Um, both of those novelizations just didn't work for me. Obi-Wan and uh, Lars being brothers. That was weird.
Yeah.
That was weird. And then the Force Awakens novelization just had too many inconsistencies, and at least in my opinion, I don't think that Alan Dean Foster understood the characters. At
Mm.
least for me, especially the character of Rey. Um, uh, but I would say that, and at least in my opinion, top novelization period is Revenge of the Sith. Stover's.
I
Um,
agree. That was good. I haven't read too many novelizations, but that was really
yeah,
good.
it's an incredible novelization, and I would say that the Last Jedi novelization is on par or better than, at least
No,
for me.
really, no kidding. See, I've avoided everything on the novelization because I haven't read it yet,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I haven't.
we'll put it this way. My review of it is like 35 minutes long.
Oh, I'll do it then.
And yeah, it's I have 20. I'm looking at my notepad here. I had 28 little revelations and thoughts that meant something to me in the novelization that I wrote down while I was reading and slash listening to it.
That's promising, considering
Yeah.
it's so short. I mean, that's like one every 10 pages,
Yeah.
maybe one a chapter then. See?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. There are some kind of deadish chapters where it's kind of like, okay, yeah, that's what happened in the movie. Especially the Canto Bite stuff. The
Okay,
Canto
yeah.
Bite stuff is very much, yeah, it's the Canto Bite that you see in the movie. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah, but you don't need
like
too much on the like, right? I mean,
the Luke and Ray dynamic on Octo for the first half of the movie is totally different.
really,
Not totally different, but it's completely recontextualized and
perfect. That's good.
explained.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, we had if you're saying there's some cool stuff on Snoke, I think Luke is probably my biggest going into it. Hopefully, we can get some more context there. And if it's Luke and Rey, then perfect.
There's one particular moment in the novelization that just makes my heart break, especially now that I realize what that moment is in the movie involving Luke. That just it completely breaks my heart to know what was going through Luke's mind at this specific moment in the film. And now whenever I watch that movie, that moment is going to hit me 1,000 times harder than it did before.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's oof.
Is there
It's a
good?
damn good novelization.
And a last little question I'll throw at you here:
Yeah.
is there some like good inner context for Kylo, or?
Yeah, I'd say so. It I would say that honestly, Kyle is probably one of the least expositioned characters.
Really? Okay.
Hux gets a lot of stuff too.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah,
See, I
Hux
wasn't going
gets
to
a
ask because I just
lot of
assumed
stuff.
that there wasn't. But well, there we go. Hopefully, we can have some interest. You know me.
Oh yeah,
I'm a fan of Hux in in a few ways here. So
yeah.
yeah, I think we need to get some perspective on him because I don't know. It was for me at least a bit of a letdown in the film, but I don't know. I'm pumped about this novelization now.
Yeah, yeah. Get through it as fast as you can because it's a damn good novelization. Good stuff. But anyways, we should probably get going now, unfortunately.
Yeah, just say I really this was great, Andrew. I appreciate you inviting me on and talking Star Wars Rebels here with me.
No, thank you so much for being here, Glenn. I truly appreciate it. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you all over the interwebs?
Yeah, I mean, the best place is probably just to go to the YouTube channel, Star Wars Reading Club. If you just enter that into the search on YouTube, you'll find me pretty quickly. And then if you want to look me up on Twitter, my handle is just at SW Reading Club, and that's where you can find me.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Glenn. Guys, I got to get out of here. I'm hoping to render this out. I probably won't be able to, but I've also got, in about 50 minutes, I've got a 3-hour podcast to record. Going to be recording the next episode of the Star Cabal podcast, which you guys can find on iTunes and Google Play. I'm working on getting it on Stitcher and Spotify and all that stuff soon. Thank you guys so much for your time, as always. And as always, may the Force be with you guys. Take care.